In this video we are going to take a closer look at the Vanguard Spearhead Army of Renown featured in Warzone Nachmund, Vigilus Alone, and why it turned out to be a monumental failure. First, we will go through what was advertised on Warhammer Community and the potential that could have been there for the Deathwatch. Then, we will quickly go through the actual rules and whether such a list can be competitive or not. In the final part, we will also look at the remaining Space Marines content of Vigilus Alone, namely 2 new datasheets, and whether at least these can be put to good use in the Deathwatch or not. Welcome to SwissHammer, your channel for modeling in Warhammer 40k. My name is Tammer and I will be guiding you through this video. Back in mid-January, Warhammer Community previewed parts of the Vanguard Spearhead Army of Renown, and to quote directly from the article, they are composed entirely of units with the Phobos, Suppressor Squad, Invictor Tactical Warsuit and Impulsor keywords. End of quote. When it comes to keywords, we Deathwatch players in particular are always watchful, and I doubt I was the only one musing about the potential of such an Army of Renown in the Deathwatch. After all, our unique Spectrus Kill Team shares the Phobos keyword. In addition to that, the preview also mentioned that Reivers would get OPSEC, which in turn could see a return of one of the most overlooked datasheets in the Space Marine Codex. From a Deathwatch perspective, while we can give OPSEC to Reivers already by including them in the mentioned Spectrus Kill Team, they then lose the Reiver keyword, which in turn prevents access to the Terror Troop stratagem, and they also break the ability to deploy through concealed positions for the other units, which in the end means that they don't see much play in the Deathwatch either. But with Reivers getting both OPSEC and retaining their Terror Troop stratagem, I was ready to make another case for them. Prior to seeing the full rules, I was musing that they, combined with a bunch of Spectrus Kill Teams, triple Invictor Tactical Warsuits with some Army of Renown special rules support, and the Phobos Captain with the Artificial Ball Cache relic, might just as well be a thing. Oh boy, was I wrong. So how do the full rules look like? As with any previous Army of Renown releases, such an army basically gets a bunch of unique restrictions and benefits. Starting with the restrictions, as previewed in the Warhammer Community article, your army can only include Phobos, Suppressor Squads, Invictor Tactical Warsuits and Impulsors. There is however also an additional bullet point that states that your army cannot include any Deathwatch units. Dreams Shattered for Good. The one chapter-specific character that is actually allowed is Shrike from the Vanguard supplement. They also happen to be clad in black, but you might want to hide that silver arm and Deathwatch shoulder pad to count as such. Poor chest aside, for the actual benefits, the Vanguard Spearhead gains access to additional 4 relics, 8 stratagems, and extra tools for infiltrators and incursors. Furthermore, they gain the Vanguard Operations ability, as well as OPSEC for incursors, infiltrators and reavers, which only really matters for the latter anyway. For the Vanguard Operations ability, this is sort of a replacement for a chapter tactics, meaning that you don't get access to the regular one of whatever chapter you decide to play, though you do keep the super doctrine, but then instead you get an army-wide light cover against ranged attacks if more than 18 inches away, as well as being able to consolidate 6 inches instead of 3. On top of that, infantry models get +1 to hit with ranged attacks if they made at least a 4 inches move away from where they started. Wouldn't want to throw a bone to Invictors, I guess. For the 4 relics, 2 of these have already been previewed. We have the Morbidus Bolts, which is yet another failed iteration of these I give you special ammo, but you can only make one shot with it. The Deathwatch has plenty of that. This is one attack with a bolt weapon. If it hits, the target suffers 2 mortal wounds until the end of the turn. That enemy unit has to subtract 1 from combat attrition tests. The second one is the Armor Umbral, which causes hit rolls of 1 to 3 to fail and lets you advance and charge. Would be an amazing relic when part of the Space Marine Codex, but not necessarily on Phobos characters. We then have the Knight's Blade, AP -3, damage 2, wounds anything but vehicles on a 2+. The fourth is Shadow's Touch, replacing the foresword of a Phobos librarian. It comes with strength +3, AP -4, damage 2. If the librarian managed to cast a power from the Obscuration discipline, the weapon also ignores invul saves. Again, pretty neat, but maybe not best used in a Phobos exclusive army. Moving on to the tools of the Vanguard, these are basically free war gear options for infiltrators and incursors. The infiltrators gain a Saboteur Explosive Pack and the Voxbreaker Auspex. You can give these to 1 infiltrator each if they are not already carrying a Helix Gauntlet or a Comms Array. So basically, you can have 1 with a Helix Gauntlet or Comm, 1 with the explosives and 1 with the Voxbreaker in the same unit. What they do is they unlock access to stratagems, to which we will come in just a moment. The incursors gain a marksman target tracker, same deal here, cannot be the one already carrying the Haywire mine, and they unlock access to a stratagem. Speaking of stratagems, we have 8 of them, with 3 of them being locked to the previously mentioned 3 tools of the Vanguard. The Saboteur Explosive Pack for 1 CP helps your infiltrators to fall back, basically by causing mortal wounds based on the roll and or whether it's a building or not. The Voxbreaker Auspex for 1 CP allows you to select an enemy unit within 18 inches, they get -1 to ranged attacks, and if they charge a target, you can set the target to defend or hold steady. Then for the incursor specific one, the Marksman Target Tracker is 2 CP and allows the Oculus Bolt carbines to ignore the Lookout Sir rule. Pricey, but at least gives some additional assassination power. Furthermore, Storm of Death for 1 CP is for Reivers and allows them to generate mortal wounds on 6s in close combat up to a cap of 6. Should just add this one to the Space Marine Codex. We then have Ocular Networking for 1 CP. This is available to anyone, can be used for either shooting or fighting, and results in unmodified wound rolls of 6 against monsters or vehicles, gaining an extra 2 AP, stacking with combat doctrines. We then have Dispersal Protocols for 2 CP, allowing you to fall back at the end of the fight phase, as if it were your movement phase. This one is pretty neat. We then have Tactical Augury for 1 CP, allowing a unit to ignore cover, and then finally we have Pivotal Moment for 2 CP, which allows core models hitting the enemy warlord with ranged attacks to generate additional mortal wounds of the same amount as the damage from the regular attacks. This is potentially powerful, but very much like with the chapter tactics, it locks out invictors due to the core restrictions, but it does generate some interesting options when combined with the incursor one, allowing them to ignore the Lookout Sir rule if you are willing to invest 4 CP in total for that. With the rules out of the way, the important question is of course whether this Army of Renown can be made competitive or not. Personally, I think the answer is a clear no. The number of datasheets is far too limited, and the special rules are just not strong enough to compensate for that. In addition to this, I really think that they did make a huge mistake to exclude Deathwatch. While I don't believe that even the inclusion of the Spectrus Kill Team could have saved this Army of Renown from its failure, it would at least have been a start. I think what's missing here are strong benefits for units like Suppressors and Invictors, especially the latter would basically have to be brought back up to the level of reliability and synergy that can be found on Redemptor Dreadnoughts. Beats me how that it not only failed to boost them, but also just excluded them from a variety of special rules. This Army of Renown also lacks a strong stratagem, like Specialism Extremis of the Kill Team Strike Force of the Deathwatch, allowing even the feebler guns to delete the target of choice. All in all, this Army of Renown feels very much like yet another attempt to promote the Space Marine Combat Patrol, which I think is a poor starter set to begin with, and maybe had they included these extra rules for free and labeled them as such for the level of Combat Patrol, this would be alright, but I don't think this is something to be considered serious for competitive play. Then moving on to the last part, the additional 2 datasheets, one for the Primaris Ancient and the other for the Gravis Captain. These datasheets have been made available for free, and I think that this is the best way to get them. From a Deathwatch perspective, while I don't think that the Primaris Ancient is something to bring along for the time being, I think it's worth mentioning that if you are magnetizing, you can basically kit bash a universal model that can serve as a Bladeguard Ancient or Primaris Ancient with whichever loadout. I have done this for my Bladeguard Ancient that was part of the Indomitus box. No need to stack up on additional models. Then for the Gravis Captain, I think he looks badass, and I really like how they implemented the Gravis fighting style ability depending on loadout. While we might perhaps pick different captains in a competitive Deathwatch army list, such as one able to bring along the Dominus Aegis relic, it is worth pointing out that converting this model to Deathwatch is surprisingly easy. As can be seen on the actual sprue, the left shoulder pad is a separate piece, making a conversion a trivial matter. Overall, I think Deathwatch players in particular, and to be fair, Space Marine players in general, can skip this Warzone Nachmund Vigilus Alone book for good. The Army of Renown feels more like an attempt to promote the Combat Patrol box rather than bringing something good to the table, and as Deathwatch players cannot really use it anyway. Furthermore, the 2 new datasheets are available for free, and this is as such the best way to get them. Maybe next time, GW. To wrap things up, over the course of the video, we have looked at the Vanguard Spearhead Army of Renown featured in Warzone Nachmund Vigilus Alone. While the sneaky theme certainly looked appealing in the Warhammer Community preview, the complete exclusions of the Deathwatch, as well as failing to implement strong rules for a very limited number of datasheets, makes this one a clear miss. What's particularly disappointing is also that this would have been a great opportunity to give a much needed boost to Reivers and partly Suppressors and Invictors, with the latter 2 being fairly niche picks in 9th edition. But as it is now, it is unlikely that this army will work well past Combat Patrol games with the starter box, which I suppose is why it was made in the first place. Furthermore, Vigilus Alone also includes 2 new datasheets for Space Marines, the Primaris Ancient and the Gravis Captain, but these are also available for free, so my recommendation would be to skip this book entirely and just go for the free datasheets, in case you are planning to use either of these models. The Gravis Captain in particular looks pretty badass and can be converted easily to the Deathwatch. So that's it for my take on the new Army of Renown in Vigilus Alone and whether it can be made competitive or not. To my fellow Deathwatch players, are you as disappointed as I am? And to the people playing different chapters, what is your take on this? Have I missed anything important or gotten any of the rules wrong? Let me know in the comments. Finally, I would also like to mention that there is a SwissHammer Facebook page where I will be posting links to my videos as well as articles I find of interest. I do read a lot about the hobby, but not all of it will always end up as its own video. I look forward to seeing you there as well. I do also have a Patreon page. If you like my content, any additional support is greatly appreciated as it helps me invest into future videos. As always, thank you very much for watching, guys. Your continued support is greatly appreciated. I hope you have been enjoying this video. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks again and see you next time.